Good evening, everybody.
Kavod Harav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Okay, so we're continuing in Joseph. Doing Tet. I think so, yeah. Yeah, okay, so let's get started. So it says right this, right? Latet chitin o seorin nitbakeu asurot. Right, so if he basted, right, the wheat or the barley and it cracked, so he says they're forbidden. Lo nitbakeu mutarot. If they're not cracked, it's permitted. The kamar mor ukva. So this rabbi says, had the kamar nitbakeu asurot. That which we said, right, that it's forbidden if it cracked. Lo nitbakeu mamash ela shekruvot ligvakea. So it doesn't mean that it really cracked. It just means like it's close to it. She'ilu manichin al pi chabit shel yain. So if we would put it on top of the barrel of wine, vehen mitbakaot, then they would crack mikoach reach hayayin from the right the smell of the wine. Veit degase. So it says some have the text like this: Api chaviv vehu kli shekalin bo kaliot alayesh. So he says, right, that if you put it on top of a utensil, which they uh, do, right, they toast the all kinds of things, grains, whatever. Either way, right, the point is, the Shmuel Omer enon mes asurot. The Shmuel says they're not forbidden, elam ken nitbake umamash, unless they're really like totally cracked, not close to being cracked. Katav Rav Alfas, so says the Rif, yesh poskin ke Shmuel. Some poskin, like Shmuel here, so meaning what? It has to be like totally cracked. V'yesh poskim kemor ukva. And some poskim like mor ukva, upasak hu kemor ukva. So here the Rif poskim is like mor ukva. The first opinion, lechumra, which is astringency. V'hane le michlin hu be'enayu. So that's only to eat them as is. אבל אם נמצאו בתבשיל, but it says if you found them in a cooked dish, wheat like this or barley, ולא נתבקעו ממש, and they didn't really crack. כיוון דאיסור משהו בדרבנן, so he says since the prohibition of a little bit, mixture of a little bit, is only rabbinical, אינן עושות התבשיל, they don't forbid the whole dish. אלא אם כן נתבקעו ממש, unless they're totally cracked. Okay, good. So I guess we'll stop there. Let's see a bit, Yosef. Says Bet Yosef regarding what the Torah said that if he basted the wheat or barley and it got cracked, it's forbidden. So where's the source for that? Besop Perek Kol Sha'ar over there in the Gemara, Mem Amud Aleph, same place as all our halachot that we're learning, right? In this topic matter recently. The Rambam Perek Pasak Gam Ken Kemor Ukva. So the Rambam also passes like more ukva, which is the first opinion. So what does that mean? That even if it's close to cracking, right, and it's not really cracked yet, it's still forbidden. Okay. So then he goes on. Umash katav arif. Now what the Rif said, right? If you found them in a cooked dish and they're not cracked, mamash, kevan de isur mashu midrabanan, since the prohibition of a little bit is only rabbinical, enam also tavshil. They don't forbid the whole dish. Ela im ken nitbakeu mamash unless they're totally cracked. Ka katav gam Rambam. That's what the Rambam says as well. Okay, interesting. This language of the Rambam. Ve'im lo nitbakeu motziim otam vesorfan. So it says if they're not cracked, what we do is we remove them and burn them. The shar tavshil, and the rest of the dish we can have, right? So we don't say, "Oh, the whole dish is forbidden," Shena dagan shenivlal or shenitbashel velo nitbaka chametz gamur, because he says right the grain which is not actually cracked, it's not really chametz. Shel Torah from the Torah. Ve'eno ela midivrei sofrim. It's only rabbinical, he says. ולפי זה, מה שכתב הריף, שזהו איסור משהו, so that was, the Rif said that the prohibition is even a little bit, היינו לומר שחיטים אלו אינם חמץ גמור. He means to say, right, that this wheat is not total chametz. אלא איסור כל דהו, it's even a little bit, יתבהו מדרבנן, so it's like only rabbinic for prohibition. אבל הרב מגיד says, כתב בלושן הריף, he writes regarding the Rif, כיוון the איסור תערובת חמץ במשהו מדרבנן, that since the prohibition, right, of chametz on Passover is even a little bit, so what does that mean? It doesn't get nullified. ואף על פי שפשט דברי הריף ככה, so it says even though the simple meaning of the Rif is like that, מכל מקום לדברי הרמב"ם צריך לומר כמו שכתבתי, but it says according to Rambam we have to say not like that. והר"ן נראה מדבריו שמפרש דברי הריף kipshatan. So the Ram seems to explain the words of the Rif like the simple meaning. The isur mashu b'dikama dehava midrabanan. That which he said, right? That it's rabbinical, the prohibition, because it's only a little bit. Haynu omar the isur tarovet memashu hava midrabanan. That the prohibition of mixtures that does not get nullified on Passover, it's only rabbinical. Shkatav al divrei harif, because he wrote regarding the Rif, de'afal gav deikar islam midoraita. That even though the main prohibition here is from the Torah, right? In other words, chametz is from the Torah. Who came on this shiura de Rabbanan, but he said since this issue of nullification is only rabbinical, so because from the Torah, right, that will be nullified. So therefore, he says we go lenient. Right. So to sum this up, right, what did we just say? What we're saying is like this, right? That on the one hand, we're stringent, according to the Rif and the Rambam, that even if it's close to getting cracked already, almost there, we still prohibit this wheat. But it doesn't prohibit the whole mixture, right? So what does that mean? We can remove that wheat and eat the rest of the dish. So why is that? Because since it's not really cracked, it's not really chametz, actually. Or the other way to explain it is we said, because it's not really chametz yet, so it gets nullified. Even though the The rule is on Passover we don't nullify, but here we can because it's not really chametz yet. Okay, good. So that's interesting. כתב מרדכי, it says מרדכי, פרק כל שעה over there, שרוצה להחמיר לעשות תבשיל זה מפני שיש לו מתירין. Oh, so he says there is another opinion, right? Which wants to say that the whole dish is forbidden. And why is that so? Why is that? Right? What reason does he have to do that? So he says the reason is because it's going to be permitted down the road, right? At some point. So what does that mean? After Passover, it'll be permitted. וכך כתב בספר המצוות, that's what's in ספר המצוות, ויש להחמיר מפני המנהג אני אוסר מספק. So he says you should be try to be stringent, he says, and because of the custom, he says I forbid this. והמקל משום שמחת יום טוב לא יפסיד. But he says the one who wants to be lenient, because he wants to enjoy, the holiday and have some good food, he didn't lose nothing, right? It's okay. He's doing good. Either way, you're good. עד כאן that's the end of it. Right? כתב הכלבו, says the כלבו, בשם הרעב"ד, name of the רעב"ד, דווקא אלו משתכחה בהי בישולה, אלא תראה, שערה, הוא דלא עשינן לה, אלא בנתבקעו בו ממש. אבל תלתה, ודאי חזקה היא דהי כתובה ושמא נתבקעו. So the Ravad says something interesting, right? He says that which we said, right, that here, the whole dish will not be forbidden. He says it's only if we found like two of them, like, that are cracked, two kernels of wheat. But he says if you found three, three is already chazakah. What does that mean? There's a presumption there that there's going to be more. So therefore, he says in a case like that, if you found three of them, the whole dish is forbidden, right? I don't know if we paskin like that, probably not, but let's see in the Shulchan Aruch, right? How we paskin. Let's just make sure we got the whole Bit Yosef here. I think there's another piece here somewhere. Let's see if we can find it.
Kavod Harav, did you say Hazakah?
Yeah, chazakah, which means like in this format, it means presumptive state.
Thank you.
All right, this word chazakah. Yeah. Okay, good. So where's our second piece? Here we are. It's all the way in the end. Okay, we found it. So here it says, right, that Katuv Bekitve Ma'ar Israel, right, the Ma'arav Israel. It says in this rabbi, which is Trumat Hadeshen, Siman Kuf Samech Dal, right, this chapter, Al Chita Shenimtzet B'Tarnagolet B'Pesach. Okay, so now, right, what about if you found wheat inside the chicken, right, on Passover? By the way, why do you have wheat in there? Because they feed them, sometimes that stuff, right? So, you found it in their stomach. It wasn't digested, in the stomach of the chicken. So it's there. So what do you do, right? Is that kosher, the chicken or whatever? אשר דרשתני אם צריך לשרפה או ישליכנה במקום הפקר, right? So he says, do you have to burn it or, right, throw it away, right, in the garbage or whatever? דע כי מנהג הוא לשרפה. So he says the custom is to burn that wheat, right, that you found in the chicken. ככתב המרדכי, like it says in מרדכי, פרק כמה דפסחים, first פרק הפסחים. בשם רי, the name of the רי, דחיטה בתרנגולת צריכה כפיית כלי. So he says, right, that the רי, that, when you find wheat, right, in the chicken, it's like total chametz. That's what we assume. כדי לשרפה בכל, so what you gotta do is you gotta burn that, right? But here's the thing, right? What he's saying over here is like this, that it really needs to be burned, but it's Yom Tov, right? So you can't really burn it on Yom Tov. So therefore, what you do is you cover it, right, with something, and then after Yom Tov goes out, on Chol HaMoed, then that's when you burn it. So you got to hold it for a while, until right Yom Tov goes out. Okay. Then so he says he doesn't agree with this, with this stringency here. So he says, you know why you don't really need to burn this? He says, because the rule is, right, that anything which is less than the size of kazait, right, olive size, you don't really need to, to burn it. So, it's very small. So he says, therefore, you don't really need to burn this, he says. Kedita pek elovain, like it says over in this perek. Katav, okay, so that's interesting. Right? He doesn't agree with that. So that means that what? That you could just chuck it in the garbage, whatever. You don't really have to burn it. Okay, good. But obviously, right, you shouldn't eat it, that's for sure, right? That we know. Okay, so then he goes on. Katava Agur b'shem Mari Molon, right? It says the rabbis said, שיש להיזהר שלמי שמשתמש בבארות פסח, שאין נזהרים בהם כל השנה. So he says, you got to watch out. He says, if you're using well water on Passover, right? For your water needs, and they're not careful all year round, with this well, right? So it says there is concern sometimes, especially if it belongs to a goy, whatever, that there's chametz inside that well. So it says if there is concern like that, what you should do is he says is to filter it out, to put it through a filter, the water. This way, if there's any chametz in there, it'll get left out. B'chol pam sheshoev ve'od says that all the time so anytime he takes water, he says, right, supply himself with some water from that well. He says, right, he should first, filter it. תתקן ברזות החדשות בכל החביות עד כן השנה. Right, so he says, ועוד ציווה, and furthermore, he said that נתקן ברזות חדשות בכל החביות. So he says, what you should do also is that, put like new taps on the barrels, don't use the old taps. Just in case that they have chametz in there. Why would they have chametz, by the way, the taps? Because maybe they used they had some liquor in there, right? Which is chametz. Like for instance, I'll give you an example. By the way, you got to watch out. With like things like whiskey. So whiskey is like chametz. So if you have some Jack Daniels and stuff like this, right? Or the similar, what you got to do is sell it for Passover, right? Or get rid of it. You can't leave that. It's chametz. One time I remember, somebody told me that he had some Jack Daniels, in the closet somewhere, and he didn't know that he had to get rid of it for Passover, so he left it there. So he calls me up and he says, "Oh, Rabbi, what should I do?" I said, What should you do? It's already forbidden. You can't sell it anymore. So get rid of it." So that's what they had to do. They had to get rid of it, unfortunately. Dump it down the sink, right, or the toilet, whatever, right? What can you do? Right? That's the way it goes. So you got to be careful with that. Make sure that your whiskey is sold, or right, or you finished it, you drank it, right? One or the other. Before Passover. Okay, right. That's the story. So that's why I tell you, right? Things like this. Sometimes in the barrels they have liquor, that which are chametz. So that's why he says you get a new spout, for the barrels. Okay, whatever. ודבר הזה של ברזות חדשות חומרה יתרה היא. So says Bet Yosef, right? He says too much of a stringency, he says, to get new spouts for the barrels, right? You don't really need to do that. Okay, whatever. Um, the truth is, that in those days, the barrels were, not used for whiskey, they were used for wine. And that's exactly why he's saying, that you don't really need to do this, according to halacha, because we don't assume that there's, chametz in the wine. You know what I mean? It's really kind of far-fetched, to say, oh, maybe some, right, what do you call it, right? Some crumbs, got in there, some breadcrumbs got. Why would you think that, right? What's the reason why there should be breadcrumbs in your wine? Right? No reason to assume something like that, unless you know for sure that it happened, right? That's a different story. But otherwise, there's no reason to assume that. So a lot of people are stringent, regarding this, by the way. There's a practical issue here as well. Right? For instance, some people are stringent. They only buy wine which is kosher for Passover, right? Of course, the wine has to be kosher, right? I'm not talking about that. But does it have to be kosher for Passover? So the answer is really no, because, there's no reason to assume that there's crumbs in the wine or whatever, some chametz in there, right? Whatever. So, you can just buy any kosher wine for Passover. It doesn't have to be kosher for Passover. No, no reason for that. Right? Whatever. So right, it is what it is. What can I tell you? That's exactly what he's saying here. There's no reason to assume that there's going to be chametz in the spout of the barrel. Why would you want to assume that? Who put right breadcrumbs into their wine? Nobody does that. Also, another thing, by the way, which this resembles, is that if you have, let's say, like an open bottle of wine, and you opened it before Passover, and you used it, let's say for Shabbat, right, whatever. And now, the question is, can you use it for Passover since it was already opened? And the answer is yes. Why not? What did you what you put breadcrumbs in there? What did you do? Right? There's no reason to assume that there's breadcrumbs in there. Whatever, something like that. So there's no reason to forbid, having open bottle of wine, which was used before Passover, and to use it on Passover. There's no problem with that. Even though people will tell you, yeah, I'll get a new bottle. Why? For what? Why do you need a new bottle for? What's wrong with this one? Something wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it. So you can't, just use your imagination and let it go wild. Yeah, there's probably breadcrumbs in there. What breadcrumbs? Who puts breadcrumbs? Okay, that's the Bet Yosef. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch, right? And we'll see what's written there. So it says in the Shulchan Aruch, "Tafshir shenitbashel v'nimtzeu bo seorim uchitim." Right? Let's say you have a cooked dish, right? As we said, some kind of a dish you made for Passover, and you found in there, right, some wheat and barley or whatever, or barley, right? So he says, right, if they're really cracked, so then the whole dish is forbidden, right? As we said, why? Because it doesn't get nullified on Passover. That's the thing. The aim but he says if they're not really cracked yet, even though it's on the way to getting cracked, right? It's on the way, but not yet. So there, right, tafshil mutar, then it's allowed. So says the Rama here, ואין המנהג כן, אלא עושים כל משהו, אפילו לא נתבקרו. So he says, the Ashkenazim are stringent regarding this, right? So we see, right, that it's a pattern like with the Ashkenazim, they're very stringent on Passover, on many different, fronts, right, on different areas. This is also another one, right, which they're stringent. So what does that mean? They forbid the whole dish, right, even though the wheat is not cracked yet. So I think we did see, right, that there's an opinion like that also, the Bet Yosef. We saw that. Okay, whatever. Anyway, right, the custom is by them to be stringent. ואותם חיטים או שעורים שורפים אותם. So says Shulchan Aruch, right? But either way, right, whether you permit this dish or you forbid it, right, depending on your custom, the point is, right, that wheat, you got to remove it and burn it, right? As we said, that's the way to do it. So that's interesting, right? That he doesn't rely on that, leniency that we saw in the Bet Yosef that says you don't have to burn it, right? You could just get rid of it, put it in the garbage, whatever. Because it's not a kazite. He doesn't seem to accept that in the Shulchan Aruch here. So therefore, right, the rule is that you should get rid of it, burn it, whatever, right? Do some kind of a destruction, active destruction there. Okay. That's the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, so if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go on. So we're going back now. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, so we're gonna do Yud now. So let's read the tour first, and we'll go back to the Bet Yosef. So it says the tour like this: Ve'im nimtza chita be'isa or bematza afuya. What about if you found wheat, right, in the dough, that you're making matzot, or also let's say if it was already baked, and then after it was baked, you found a piece of, kernel of wheat in there. What's the story with that? So he says, Katav Adonai Avi Rosh, it says the Rosh, his father, Shemutar, it says it's allowed. Afilu hui bebeku'ah, even if it's cracked. Oh, interesting, right? Shafilu nitbake'ah, eno chametz gamur. So it says, why? Because even if it was cracked, it's not really chametz. Ela karov le'chametz, it's like close to it. Kediyamar Ri, like Ri says, right? Shoran bechometz vechometz tzomatan, v'dabar yadua shechita kasha, ואינה ממהרת לחמיץ כמו עיסה. וכיוון שהעיסה לא החמיצה, כל שכן החיטה לא חשינן שמא הייתה במים. לפי שישראל רגילים לשמור יפה המים השמורים, וראיתי קצת גדולים. So he says, right, the Rosh, according to his opinion, this is not forbidden at all. Why is that? So the logic is like this, right? He says that the reason why we permit this is because just like the matzah, right, itself is, kosher, and, we don't assume that it got leavened. So then why would you assume that the wheat got leavened, right? There's no reason. It's the same as the matzah itself. Because, what is the matzah made from? It's also made from wheat, right? You're making it from flour. So just like the flour didn't get leavened, also the wheat didn't get leavened. That's what he's saying. There's no reason to assume that it got leavened, right? And he says that also applies even if it's cracked. Okay, interesting. So it doesn't resemble the case of the dish, right? The cooked dish. There we said it's forbidden if it's cracked. But here, not so. That's what the Rosh says. Okay, interesting. So let's go on. וראיתי קצת מהגדולים שאסרו אותה, right, matzah. So he says, but I did see some rabbis, he says, some big rabbis who forbade this, to eat that matzah, right? ויש אחרים שאסרו כל המצות ולא נהר הסטיס. But he says, there are also another opinion, which is even more stringent, that they forbid, the whole batch, right, that you made like that. But lo nehera, he says, I don't agree with that. He says, I don't agree with that. Shafilu hayta chametz lama teaser kol matzah. Says even if it was chametz, right, that wheat, why would you forbid the whole matzah anyway, right? That which we say, right, that chametz, it doesn't get nullified. That's only al bishul. That's only when it comes to cooking. שמתפשט החמץ בכל הקדרה, because then, right, the chametz gets spread into the whole pot, the dish, right? אבל אם כזית חלב נפל על החררה, אחד, דבר ידוע שאין איסור חלב מפעפע בכל חררה. Right, so he says, right, that if a kazite of chelev, right, not chalav, chelev, which is fat, right, fell on the right, the matzah. He says it's known that we don't forbid it. Why? Because it won't spread in the whole matzah, the taste of the fat. Why is that, by the way? Because it's baking, right? It's dry. It's not. There's no water there. There's no sauce. There's no right gravy, whatever you want to call it, right? That's why the taste doesn't spread all over. אפילו לא הווה כבישול. So it's, you know why baking is not like, like boiling, it's not the same thing. להתפשט אותם בכל החררה, that you spread all over their whole matzah. אלא אוסר כדי קליפה. So it says, therefore, you just have to remove, right, as we said, around that area, you have to remove, like 2 centimeters, and the rest of it is allowed. או כדי נטילה, right, or like a little bit more. וכל שכן חיטה אחד שאין כוח בפליטה להתפשט בכל החררה. So all the more so, he says, when it comes to one kernel of wheat, that for sure, right, the taste of that will not spread in the whole matzah. It's a very small, piece there. This rabbi also wrote this. Sheim nimtzet chital basar maliach. So he says, right, that if you found the wheat on, right, the salted meat or tzari, or right, roasted meat, or al matzah rotachat, or hot piece of matzah, right? Chotech makom pifuo lefi omed adat. So he says you cut out, around, right, around that area. Ve'imhu b'yom tov acharon. It says if it's the last day of Passover, which is only rabbinical, shel Pesach mutar le'ashoto. He says you can keep it adachar Pesach. You can keep it until after Passover. Kivan shehu safek yom tov, because it's a doubt whether it's yom tov or not. Safek kol, or it could be also, it's a weekday. Adkan, that's the end of it. So okay, that's the end of the whole story here. Okay, very good. So let's see the Bet Yosef. So it says Bet Yosef over here regarding this. Hakol Psachim Peret Kol Shais. It's all in the right Masechet Psachim over there in the Rosh. That's where he brings his opinion over there. And he's lenient about this, right? As we said. Okay, that's one piece. Now we have the other piece, which is not this one, but let's see where that is. Here, this one. Okay, so it says here, that what you said, right? That the last day of Passover, you can leave it. You don't have to get rid of that the wheat. Adachar Pesach, right? You just leave it after Passover. Ken katvu hagot maimon. This says also hagot maimon pek aleph. The amorchi pek kol shah. By the way, when we say the last day of Passover, we're talking about in the diaspora, right? That we do 8 days, But in Israel, they do only 7 days, So over there, it will not apply this thing. Why is that? Because all the 7 days are from the Torah, right? But here, the 8th day, in the diaspora is from only the rabbinical. That's why he's saying that. So you can be more lenient, right? Okay, so he says, right, that so he says like this, right? The Mordechai there. כן כתבה הגות מיום בפרק א' ומרדכי פרק כל שעה וזה לשונו, right? חיטה מבושלת בתרנגולת. If you have, as you said, with wheat, which is, cooked inside a chicken, אין להשותה, you shouldn't keep that around, you got to get rid of it, right? You got to burn it. אלא אם כן נמצאת ביום אחרון, unless it's the last day, right? של פסח, דאין בו איסור כי אם מדרבנן, because that's only rabbinical. ואף על פי שכתבו קודם לכן, and even though, right, they wrote beforehand, כשהיה מוצא רבנו תם, that they said, right, that if Rabbeinu Tam would find, right, chita mitanagolet, the piece of wheat, right, the kernel of wheat, and the chicken, mevushelet, which was cooked, the Pesach, and Passover, hayam matir leashota ad leachar Pesach. He was allowed to keep it until after Passover. Umashma de'afilu b'mitzat tochim me Pesach. That implies that even, not the last day, even before that. Hayam matir, he would allow leashota to keep it. Rabbeinu Tam, but he says Rabbeinu Tam is going to his reasoning. Shesover, that he holds the chametz b'shishim, that chametz does get nullified, right, in Passover in 60th. But he didn't want to do, right, practically, to allow this. But what he did was, right, he would allow to keep it until after Passover, at least that much, right? Not to eat it. But he says, according to us, though, right, we don't hold like Rabbeinu Tam. So what does that mean? We forbid chametz even a little bit, right? It doesn't get nullified. So therefore he says, right, that asur le'ashotah, you cannot keep it according to our custom. according to our opinion. Unless it was only the last day of Passover, right? Which is rabbinical, as we said. Ve'im tomar, and you can tell me, why would the last day be any different than the other days, right? Why? Because it's rabbinical? So what does that mean? It's rabbinical. What? So everything is allowed? What does that mean, right? What's the logic there, right? So he says we answer that like this: the b'shar yemei haPesach ikar Yisrael haved devar Torah mishum hachi machminin habil tefei. Since the other days are from the Torah, so we're more stringent, right? Okay, we're more stringent. So in other words, if there's a doubt, we can be lenient, in the last day, which is rabbinical. That's what he's saying, right? And there is a doubt here regarding this, right? By the way, what is the doubt? So the doubt is like this, that what do you call it? First of all, there's one doubt, right? Could be that this wheat is not really chametz. We're not really sure about that, right? That's one thing. There's also another doubt, right, which comes in here, which is we just mentioned above, that the truth is, right, according to the simple meaning of the last day of Passover, in the diaspora, it's also a doubt whether it's a holiday or not. It could be that it's not the holiday. It's already, like it's a weekday. Even though nowadays, by the way, it's not really a doubt by us because we have a fixed calendar, but in those days it was a doubt. So therefore, right, we still go according to the standard of those days. That there was a doubt there, we can use that doubt. And that's the reason why we're lenient regarding this issue. And also many other issues as well. Okay, so that's the story.
So it's a double doubt, no?
Yeah, the truth is, here's the clincher, right? That here you don't need a double doubt. Why is that? Because it's only rabbinical, You need a double doubt only when it's from the Torah.
Okay.
But if it's rabbinical, even one doubt is enough.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes, thank you.
So there you go, right? But you're right. Technically speaking, it is. Okay. So anyway, right, let's go on. Katav Mordechai pegged kol sha'a. Says the Mordechai, right? If you found, right, a piece of wheat and cooked chicken, mevukat, and it's cracked, right? Says even the first days of Passover, shel Pesach mutar lemochra legoyim. Says you can sell to a goy, right? That you can do. בתוך הפסח, לפי שאינה נמכרת יותר ביוקר. It says because it's not really, right, sold, it's not exactly a high price over there, right? בשביל החיטה שנמצאת בתוכה, because of the piece of wheat which is inside there, נמצא דאין לו הנאה, so he says it comes out, he has no benefit. Interesting. He has no benefit, מן החיטה כלל, from that piece of wheat. So he's not getting any benefit from it. All right, well, that's an interesting concept. Okay, well, something to sleep on, right? You got to sleep on that. Okay. I hope you don't dream about it tonight when you go to sleep. All right. So anyway, right, let's go on to Shulchan Aruch, and we'll stop there, I guess. So it says Shulchan Aruch like this, right? תרנגולת מבושלת שנמצא בפסח חיטה מבוקת. You found, right, a piece of, a kernel of wheat inside your cooked chicken, right? By the way, today, nowadays it's not very common, this. And you know why that is? Because when you go to the store, right, the butcher, right, and you buy your chicken, it's already been cleaned out, so you're not going to find, probably a piece of wheat in there. It's very unlikely. You know what I mean? Because all that stuff has been removed already, right? We live in a very sterile world, right? Everything is nice and clean and, and cleaned out and prepared for us. We're spoiled basically, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you. So we don't have these issues so much today, everything is very sterile and clean and, whatever, hygienic, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? So you're not going to find it today, probably very unlikely you're going to find something like that. But in those days, it was like a whole chicken, with everything, right? The digestive system, the entrails, and all that stuff, right? All that disgusting stuff there. And so that's where you would find it. That's that's where you find that stuff over there. Okay, so right. So anyway, right? He says mutar le'mochra b'Yehuda. You could, as we said, right? You're allowed to sell it to a goy. שאינה נמכרת יותר ביוקר בשביל החיטה שנמצאת בתוכה. Why? So it says because that piece of wheat, right, that you're going to sell together with your other chametz, whatever, right? It's not going to be any more expensive. In other words, the goy is not going to charge you for that, right? So, I mean, you're not going to charge him. That's what it really means, right? Because he's giving you money, right? So you're not going to charge him more because of a piece of wheat, right? It's going to be the same price. So you're not going to get any benefit from it. So he says that's why you're allowed to, because you're not allowed to benefit from chametz on Passover, right? That's exactly the reason why he's saying that. Okay, interesting concept. Right? Very unlikely, by the way, this is going to happen to you, right? It's a once in a blue moon, whatever, right? In 100 years, 1,000 years, this kind of thing will happen. So whatever, right? Especially nowadays, right? In those days, maybe it was more common, as we said. So says the Ramah here, right? Umedinot elu nuhagim lisrof hakol. So here again, right? You find Ashkenazim are stringent, right? So says the Ramah, he says by us the custom is we burn the whole chicken, right? Interesting, right? But the question is he talking about the chicken or just the wheat, right? Let's see the Mishnah Berurah what he says about that, right? That's very interesting. It sounds like he's talking about the whole chicken, right? Which is a big stringency, by the way. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. You can see in the Mishnah Berurah here. So says the Mishnah Berurah something interesting, right? So he says if it's a big loss for you, in other words, to lose that whole chicken, it's too much money for you, it's significant, right? The chicken costs like $10, God knows whatever, right? It's money, it's not pocket change, what I mean? $10 is money. So he says if the Achronim, the later authorities, it says they said that if it's a big loss for you, right? So then you can be lenient like the Shulchan Aruch, right? To be Sephardi, right? if you're losing money, you can be Sephardi, no problem, right? That's the whole thing. That's what it says in Mishnah Berurah. Okay, very good, right? Whatever. So it is what it is, right? So again, right, you see that Ashkenazim are very stringent on Passover. They have all kinds of stringencies. Right? It's a different world by the Ashkenazim, honestly. Like it's really it's a different kind of holiday altogether. Let's put it this way. Okay, so that's the way it is by them. So that's the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, so I guess we'll stop there. Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Right? Tomorrow is a fast day, by the way. I'm just reminding you. And the fast starts like 72 minutes before sunrise. Whatever it is in your area, right, where you live. Look on your chart there, your local chart, and see, right, when the sun rises, and dawn is usually like 72 minutes before. So, just to be on the safe side, 75 minutes you do because, now the nights are a little bit getting right. The days are getting a bit longer than the nights. So a little bit more. 75 minutes before sunrise, you're good to go, right? That's the story. So until then, you can still eat and drink. But as I told my community right tonight, I gave a lecture tonight over there at the shul. Right? It's on Facebook if you want to see it, by the way. If you want to see a clean-shaven rabbi, giving a lecture, look at me there. Right? Right, I told them that what do you call it? If you want to eat, right, get up early, like before dawn, and eat, because you have a work day or whatever, you need energy. So I said, right, that what you should do is, before you go to sleep, make a condition, right? Say or think, that you're going to eat and drink if you get up. You have to do that right before you go to sleep, So this way, right, you'll be covered. Otherwise, the fast already started for you once you went to sleep, otherwise. So make sure you make that condition, and before you go to sleep, and you can, drink in the morning or before dawn, right? As we said, right? By me over here, dawn is 5:43 in the morning tomorrow, So whatever it is for you, 75 minutes before sunrise, right? That's what it comes out to be. The Ashkenazim are a little bit more stringent, by the way. They do like 90 minutes, whatever. So, whatever, right? Whatever it is that you do. So, okay, very good. So, Bezrat Hashem, fast day tomorrow, and you have to stop. You can eat already like 20 minutes after sunset, right? Tomorrow. So, sunset is like here about 7:10. So 7:30 you can already eat. Whatever sunset is by you, right? Wait another 20 minutes after the fast day, right? And you can right? You can eat after 20 minutes after the sunset. So if you want to see a little bit about the rules of the fast, right? Look at my class that I gave tonight, my mini class, right, on Facebook, and I'll put it on YouTube also. I'll upload it, Bezrat Hashem, and you'll see. Okay, so Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov. All the best.
Kavod Harav. Thank you so much.
God bless.